Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
Moved by Councillor Arola, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the regular meeting commence at the hour of 7 p.m. And be it further resolved that Council acknowledges that we are meeting in the Robinson Superior Treaty area on lands that have been traditionally used by several Indigenous nations. But we'd like to pay special recognition to our closest Indigenous neighbours, the communities of Bidigon, Shinabig, and Pic-Mobert First Nations. We wish to recognize the long history of the First Nations and Métis people in our region specifically, and show respect to them today. All in favour? Thank you. Call the meeting to order. There's an addition.
Yes, one addition to agenda item number 1207, appointment of Melissa Biggin as non-union representative on the Township Health and Safety Committee.
Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scampanello. Resolved that the agenda be approved as amended. All in favour? Thank you. The next item is delegation and presentation. So you're on, Mr. McLean.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to present this evening our auditors who are going to go over our 2020 report. Chris, did you want to come up to the table? He said no. Chris is not going to join us at the table, at the big table.
I'm here.
But he is in the room.
Thanks for the support, Chris. Okay, so if it's okay, I'll get started. Just introductions, myself, my name is Frank Lopez. I'm the partner on the engagement, have been for a number of years. Also joining me is Lindsay Halla, who's a senior manager with the firm. And again, she's been working with the township for a number of years as well. Now, you should have two documents that were circulated. One titled Report to the Members of Council, Audit Strategy and Results, and then a copy of the draft financial statements. If it's okay, maybe I'll ask Lindsay to present the report, just so you guys know where we're at as we go through it. So I'm going to start by taking you through the report to the Members of Council on the audit strategy and results. And if you look at the executive summary, really the purpose of this report is twofold. One, obviously, we have to meet our professional standards with regards to presenting our audit findings and our audit results to those responsible for the financial oversight, and in this case, it's council. But also it helps council basically check the box that they did their responsibilities with regards to the oversight of the financial reporting. So it is a twofold kind of presentation. The status of the audit's complete. Just like every other year, we wait for council to approve the financial statements before we sign our audit report. And then we also will ask management, after the statements are approved, to sign the management representation letter. And then finally, once the financial statements are approved, we basically go back and just make sure that nothing's happened between when we completed our audit and today's date, assuming council approves the financial statements, just to make sure there's nothing that would impact the financial statements. And to be totally honest, it really comes down to whether or not there's any lawsuits or anything like that would impact the financial statements. That's really where our procedures are focused. So with regards to our audit approach, there is an appendix, Appendix A, that talks about our audit approach in detail, and I'm not expecting council to be experts in audit approach, but really just want to talk about it at a high level. And really, it really gets driven by the planning process. So we spend a lot of time at the beginning of the engagement just making sure that we've got all the risks nailed down. And then what we do is we design procedures to cover off those risks. So what we're looking for is the risk of an error that's material to the financial statements. And, you know, that assessment really comes down to our knowledge of your municipality, but also our knowledge of the industry in which you operate. So the fact that we do 12 other municipalities out of our office helps us understand the environment you're in and where those risks can occur in the various municipalities. So let's talk a little bit about audit risks and results. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact it's had, not only on your municipality, but on every organization around the world, really. And the first piece that we need to address, or management needs to address, is this idea of going concern. So, you know, going concern means that the organization will continue to operate as it always has, that COVID hasn't impacted your organization so much that, you know, you can't operate the way you used to in the past. And, you know, in your industry, we used to just blush over this, to be quite honest with you, because, you know, in the municipal government field or the not-for-profit area, you know, you didn't hear about those organizations ever going into receivership or bankrupt or those kinds of things. And then all of a sudden we hear stories about Laurentian University, for example, where they filed for bankruptcy protection. So, you know, it's a bit of a wake-up call where we can't just take it for granted anymore. So, you know, with our discussions or through our discussions with management and going through the whole going concern assumption, you know, management's concluded that the municipality can continue to operate as a going concern, and we concur with that assessment. And you'll see that highlighted in our audit report. The other impact of COVID-19 is just how it impacted your organization and some of the risks associated with it. You know, you'll see in the financial statements, the reality is you weren't able to execute on, you know, your whole rec budget, for instance, and some of your other projects that you wanted to just because of the impacts of COVID and how they impacted your organization. So those are some of the direct impacts of COVID-19. But there's also the indirect ones where, you know, you provide services to the ratepayers, you provide services to other businesses in your community, and you set up those receivables, so they owe you the money for that. And the impacts of COVID are, you know, the impacts on those organizations, those individuals, and whether or not they have the ability to pay their bills. So, again, those are some of the indirect impacts, and that's just an example of the impacts COVID could have on your municipality. The report goes on to state some of the other areas, like your tangible capital assets, your accounts payables, your commitments, your revenues and expenses. So, again, we worked with management to make sure that the assessments around these balances are fairly presented in your financial statements, and we believe they are. So when Lindsay takes you through the financial statements, we've addressed a lot of the impacts of COVID and other impacts as well in those financial statements. So some of the other significant transactions that we need to talk about, obviously your capital expenditures. So you had a pretty significant capital program this year to the tune of about $3.9 million. The largest project out of that 3.9 is the airport runway, which is about $3.2 million of that $3.9 million of spend. So we spent a lot of time making sure that those capital assets are properly recorded in your financial statements, and we came to the conclusion that they are. So the next item is your federal gas tax funding. So every year you get allocated a pot of money from the government. This year it was $117,000, just north of $117,000, and you actually are earned or spent $92,000 of that. So again, when Lindsay takes you through the financial statements, you'll see that included in your deferred revenue is this federal gas tax money. And at December 31st, $607,000 available to the municipality to spend on projects that meet the criteria set aside for that gas tax money. So again, from an audit perspective, we audited the expenditures that are allocated to that gas tax money and made sure that they were eligible, and we came to the conclusion that they are. Some of the other funding you received, so you received $700,000 from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Again, we just made sure that those balances were properly recorded in the financial statements, and there weren't any biases from management on how to deal with that money. And then your OMPF funding, just north of $1.7 million. Again, just making sure that it was properly recorded and properly received by the municipality. Landfill closure and post-closure liabilities. So again, this is a pretty significant estimate in your financial statements, and really it's a reflection as to what the present value of any capping and monitoring will be in the future. So you'll notice that balance dropped significantly this year, and Lindsay will take you through it, but really it came down to the discount factors that were used in coming up with those calculations. As interest rates change, the discount factors change as well. So there's a $132,000 change, and it really came down to those discount or inflation rates that were applied. So again, from an audit perspective, we reviewed the assumptions around that and came to the conclusion that they're fairly presented. So let me get into significant risks, and the first one is this, fraud risk from revenue recognition. So our standards basically state that, in every organization, there's this presumed risk of fraud around revenue recognition, and what that means is, there's two types of fraud, right? There's a fraud that you hear or you read about in the paper where, someone has stolen from an organization and benefited personally as a result of their inappropriate behavior. So that's one type of fraud. The other type of fraud that this is dealing with is financial reporting fraud, where an organization, in your case management, knowingly misrepresents results to benefit the municipality, right? So again, it's something that our standards require us to look at, and we have, and we list there what we've done, and a lot of it is around testing journal entries, adjustments that management's made, assessing some of the assumptions around a lot of the transactions that are there, and we came to the conclusion that there are no issues noted and no fraud that was uncovered as a result of that. The other risk of fraud, obviously, is where, again, management knowingly has taken stuff. So in this case, there's this risk of management override. And when we talk about the controls around your organization, we highlight the fact that there's a lack of segregation of duties. And what that means is you have one individual that has access to everything from a financial reporting perspective. So that's not a perfect world. It's not the ideal situation. The way to fix it is to go higher. No, we're not recommending you do that, but we have to identify that as a risk. So our procedures are again, twofold. One is that the procedures are there to protect the municipality, but also a lot of our procedures are around protecting, the treasurer, because we want to make sure that if something does happen, no one's pointing any fingers at anybody. So again, we spent a lot of time looking at adjustments made by management and came up with the conclusion that no issues were identified or noted through the procedures that we went through. And that deals with the next item, the fraud and illegal acts. Again, making sure that nothing has happened or management or anybody has done anything that would fall into buckets of fraud or done anything illegal. So based on our procedures, the testing that we've done, we didn't identify any issues with regards to these fraud or illegal acts. Some of the accounting practices, so accounting estimates, and again, the reason why estimates are one of the items where we focus our attention is because when you're looking at the estimates, we don't have an invoice or a confirmation from a third party to go to. So really what we end up doing is we end up sort of auditing the assumptions that management makes in coming up with some of these estimates. So the two biggest estimates you have in your financial statements is your allowance for doubtful accounts. So, management does an assessment as to whether or not they're going to collect all the money that's owing to you. And if there's any doubt, they set up what we call an allowance for doubtful accounts. And so again, we look at those assumptions and make sure that they're reasonable based on what we've seen in the past and what management's assessment of those receivables are. And then the other one we've touched on already is the landfill liability. So obviously, how much capacity is left in the landfill site, what some of the discount factors are, inflation factors used. Those are all assumptions that factor into the calculation. And again, we sit down with management to assess whether or not those balances are reasonable, and came to the conclusion that they are. Then some of the other areas of focus, with regards to legal or regulatory issues, no items noted there that should be of concern. Cooperation during the audit, as you can appreciate, there were some delays this year. Combination of the fact that we're in a COVID type environment, but also just size of your staff and some of the issues that the treasurer had to deal with. So there were some delays, and that's why we're here in October going through the financial statements. Consultations with other accountants. Based on our knowledge, management didn't do any opinion shopping with other accountants. So in regards to adjustments and unrecorded audit differences, so again, when we come in and look at financial statements and do the audit, perform the audit, we usually come up or find differences between what management has recorded in the books and what we believe should be recorded. And when we find these differences, we sit down with the treasurer and go through them, and the treasurer makes a decision as to whether or not he wants to make the adjustment or not. So we've listed there the adjustments that management has decided to make in the financials.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes the timing issue. So, management makes the assessment, well, we're not going to report it this year because it's going to get paid, early in the following year. So that's what you see on the next page there with regards to the under accrual of vacation accrual, $49,000. So again, it become a bit of an accounting nightmare to set it up and then sort of amortize it as people are using it. So that's what that item is there. And then the other item there, the $29,000, is just a reversal of what was there last year that actually reversed into this year's financial statements. Okay. So the other reportable matters, with regards to internal controls, I touched on this concept of lack of segregation of duties. So again, you have a treasurer that has access to a lot of stuff. So again, what our recommendation is that you continue to do what you're doing. When you do have the opportunity to approve things, that you ask questions. Usually by asking questions, you'll uncover any errors that might be in the financial statements. So, don't be afraid to ask questions. If something doesn't look right, odds are it's not right. So that'll uncover some of that. And then reconciliation of accounts. So again, when you saw the list of adjustments that we recommended, a lot of the accounts of the municipality get reconciled at the end of the year, and we encourage management to reconcile things throughout the year just to make sure that any information that comes to council is as accurate as possible. Now, again, we have to factor in the fact that, from a staffing perspective, there's only so many hours in the day, so, it really comes down to what can get done in the period of time that management is allowed to or allocated the time to do it. So, but again, from council's perspective, it is something we need to highlight and bring to your attention. The other item here is cybersecurity. I think we touched on it last year as well. It's not a matter of if, but when hackers start looking at some of the municipalities, and we've been seeing more and more of this happen with our clients, regardless of what industry they're in, where these hackers come in and they basically start compiling information and getting access to various pieces of personal information. And then you'll get an email on a Friday afternoon saying, we're going to shut down your system. We have access to, social insurance numbers and bank account information of your customers and your ratepayers. So therefore, we want X number of dollars. And it's become a very lucrative business around the world. So we'd be remiss if we didn't bring it to your attention. So it is something that is likely going to happen more and more frequently, and we're seeing it already happen. With regards to independence, we have to confirm that we are independent of your organization, which I'm proud to say we are independent, so we're not biased in any way. We have a good relationship with your municipality, with Chris and the whole team, but at the end of the day, we make sure that we are independent of your organization and it won't impact our report to you. The technical update and highlight. So I'm not going to bore you by going through a lot of technical jargon. Just be sure that we'll work with the township to make sure that any changes are reflected not only in your financial statement, but in the audited procedures that we do going forward and into the future. So when we get to the appendices, so Appendix A is sort of the overview and approach, and I just want to highlight again the roles and responsibilities of the various parties that factor into the financial reporting process. So again, the role of counsel is just to set the tone for the organization, to oversee the work of management and the external auditors, which is why we're here today. The role of management it's important to note that the financial statements really are management's responsibility, and the internal controls that feed into the financial statements are all also management's responsibility. So we'll highlight that in the audit report, and you'll see that when I walk you through the audit report. The role of Grant Thornton is really to provide an opinion on the financial statements based on our audit, to be independent and objective, and to establish effective two-way communication, not only with management, but with council as well. The audit approach, again, just want to focus that those first three categories that you see there are really all tied to the planning and making sure that we get the planning right. So we assess risk, make sure that we tailor procedures to cover off that risk. And then what we're doing today is in category number 5, it's concluding and reporting back to you. So that's a summary of our audit findings and results. Are there any questions before we talk about the financial statements, which is really why we're here to chat tonight? So if not, the other document you have is the draft financial statements. And what I'm supposed to do here is I'll walk you through the independent auditor's report, and then I'll ask Lindsay to take you through the financial statements and talk about the numbers and some of the variances in the statements. So the independent auditor's report, just to be clear, what you're going to see in the audit report is what we call a clean audit opinion. So there's no qualifications, no denial or anything like that. So it's what the ministry and what you as counsel should be looking for in a set of financial statements and an audit report. So the audit reports addressed to the members of council, inhabitants, and ratepayers of the corporation of the Township of Manitowoc. And like I said before, this is important because we need to know who we work for. And as a team, we make it very clear to our team that we work for the ratepayer and council. We believe we have a great relationship with Chris and the rest of the team at the Town of Manitowoc, or Township of Manitowoc. But our team knows that they work for the ratepayer, and that's important. The opinion, so the first paragraph just goes on to state what we've done, that we've audited the financial statements attached to this report. And again, our opinion paragraph is the second paragraph, and basically says that in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township as at December 31st, 2020. So it's a clean audit opinion. The basis of our opinion is that the fact that we conducted an audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. The responsibility of management, again, like I said earlier, These financial statements are management's responsibility, and so are the internal controls that feed into the financial statements. Management is also responsible for assessing the ability to operate as a going concern, which again we talked about. And those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the township's financial reporting process, and that's again why we're here tonight. The auditor's responsibility. So our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance, and reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not a guarantee. In order to guarantee that the financial statements are free of any error, we would have to audit every transaction and be basically on site the whole time, which is not cost effective and doesn't make any sense. So that's why this concept of materiality comes into play. So it is, like I said, a high level of assurance, so there's nothing to be worried about. But we did form auditing standards. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. But we also, and they're listed there in the bullets, we identify and assess the risk of material misstatement and obviously design procedures to cover that off. We obtain an understanding of your internal controls, and then we test those that are relevant to the audit or provide us with audit evidence. We evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies used. And what's important to note here is that management hasn't changed any of their policies to benefit themselves or to benefit the municipality. So there's consistency on applying those accounting policies. There's a conclusion on the appropriateness of that going concern. So again, we concur with management's assessment that the municipality of Manitowoc can continue as a going concern. We evaluate the overall presentation of the financial statements. So what the financial statement means. Both Lindsay and I take a step back. Are these statements misleading in any way? So someone using the financial statements, even though they don't have any material errors, is it sending the wrong message? And obviously, because we're issued a clean opinion, we believe that they present fairly the financial position of the municipality. So that's our audit report. Again, it's a clean audit opinion. And I'll pass it over to Lindsay to take you through the financial statement.
Thanks, Frank. I'll start with the consolidated statement of financial position. So here you have total financial assets of $13 million versus the $11.1 in the prior year. I will just highlight some items here. You'll notice that your cash and your temporary investments are down slightly, about just over $1 million. You'll also notice below, though, it's your accounts receivable is up significantly, so it is a bit of a timing issue there. Also included in your total financial assets is your taxes receivable. So you have your current year and your prior year, less what you've allowed for doubtful accounts. This year, your current taxes have increased, but that's mainly due to one property that wasn't paid at year end that was paid after year end in the new year there. So liabilities, you have total liabilities at the 2.7 versus the 3.2 in the prior year. Your accounts payable are down slightly compared to the prior year. If you remember last year, you had quite a few receivables for the water treatment plant at year end. This year, you do have a holdback payable that was paid after year end for the airport included in there of $355,000. You have your due to trust, and then you have your deferred revenue. So just a reminder, deferred revenue is money that you've received, but you've just not earned or spent yet. So like Frank mentioned in the presentation, included in your deferred revenue is approximately just over $600,000 from gas tax. And then you also have you have approximately 2 years worth of OCFA money that was allocated, included in there too. Then we have our landfill closure and post-closure liability of the $583 that Frank mentioned. And then your long-term debt was repaid in the year. So you have net financial assets of 10.2 versus the 7.9 in the prior year. So for your non-financial assets, you have $22.8 million there, most of that being your tangible capital assets. So like Frank said, there was additions of approximately 3.9, most of that being the airport runway. And then you also had a sand truck for $250,000 also included in there. Those are the bigger items. So you have a total accumulated surplus of the $33 million versus the 28 in the prior year. So you'll note that this is PSAP surplus. So this isn't money that you have to spend. This is your PSAP surplus of the $33 million. So on the next,
we'll give you a breakdown of what's included in that $33 million when we get to Schedule 1.
Yes. On the next page, you have your revenue. So your total budgeted revenue of 12.5 versus total revenue of 12.3. You'll notice there your taxes were pretty on budget. The difference being just your subs that were included there. Your user fees are down compared to your budget. Water and sewer was lower in the current year. And then under your government transfers, you have grants of 5.3 versus the 5.1 actual. So included in your Government of Canada, you have your airport grant for just over $3 million. Your gas tax of $92,000 was included in there. And then under your Province of Ontario, you have your OMPF funding of $1.7 million. You did receive safe restart money, so this was sort of to cover COVID costs, and that wasn't budgeted for. So that was additional money that you did receive of $185,000. Also included in there is money you received for your community transportation, your MyRide grant. So about $66,000 was spent in there. So under other, you have your investment income. So there's a difference between the budget and actual. So generally you don't budget for the internal interest, your reserve interest there. You have your other income of just budgeted 1.3 versus the actual 1. So included in there is your $700,000 from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And then you do have the $200,000 that you did receive from BERC that was then transferred to the EDC. You have your penalties and interest, and then your rent, giving you total other revenue of $1.7 million. And there's your total revenue of the 12.3. On the next page, you have your expenses. So you have total budget expenses of $9.8 million versus $7.6 million. So most of the variances that you will notice when we go through them are due to, vacancy positions during the year, or, COVID not just, not being open. Mostly in the rec department there, it was closed for a majority of the year. So just going through a couple of them here. So general government, 1.8 actual. You did have some savings in the salary and benefits line, in council as well as admin. The CAO was off on unpaid leave. Under your protection to persons and property. Also included in the general government, you did budget for tax write-offs of approximately almost $400,000, and the actuals were significantly less. Now into property or protection to persons and property. So you did again have savings in the salary and training line in this category. In transportation, again, most of the savings is due to again salary, superintendent position not being filled. Under environmental, the main difference between the budget and the actual is really the credit for the landfill liability that was credited this year of $132,000. Under rec and cultural services, again, with most of the facilities not being open, there was quite a few savings there, and also in the salary line, there was approximately $141,000 in savings in salary. And then in planning and development, the main difference here is you budgeted for demolitions of $100,000, and those weren't completed in the year. So you have net revenue of $4.7 million. Your annual surplus of 4.7 plus your beginning of the year of the 28 gives you total end of the year of 33. So again, the surplus is the PSAP surplus, and if you want to flip to page 21, Schedule 21, we'll go through the breakdown of that surplus. So here's your schedule of accumulated surplus. So here you have your investments in your tangible capital assets of your $22.8 million. And then your unfunded items. So these are items to be funded in the future. So that includes your landfill of the $583. And then you have your reserves here. So you have total reserves of 2.4 and reserve funds of 8.4. So there was approximately 1.2 million of operating surplus that was transferred into the assessment appeals and into the other project lines. So about $619,000 in each of those areas. So that was your operating surplus in the year. So I'm just going to take you back to page 6 here. To your consolidated statement of changes in net financial assets. So here's your annual surplus of the 4.7. You take out your acquisition of your capital assets, add back your amortization, and then your acquisition of prepaids and the uses. So you have an increase in net financial assets of the 2.2 million, and then your net financial assets at the beginning of the year of 7.9 gives you total net assets of the 10.2. So this figure you'll see reconciles to your financial assets on your statement of financial position. On the next page is just your statement of cash flows, and it just shows you the sources and uses of cash and reconciles to your cash balance at year end. And then the next few pages are your significant accounting policy. There's been no changes in the current year. And then starting on page 13 here is just your note details and the breakdowns of some balances. So here are your taxes receivable. You will notice that they have increased in the year. And I did mention that there was one property of about $150,000 that was paid after year end, which was quite significant. Under your accounts receivable, we just have the breakdown here, and you can see your grants are quite significant of $3 million. You also have your water receivables and just some other, general receivables. The biggest amount in there being your HST of approximately $528,000 that was receivable at year end. Then on the next page, you have your deferred revenue breakdown. So there was your gas tax of $607, and then included in here is 2 years worth of OCFA allocations, approximately just over $300,000. And then some deferred revenue for the My Ride, your community transportation, for $84,000. In note number 7, we just disclosed the amount that was contributed to owners in the year, which was $172,000. And then on the next page, we talk about the landfill closure and post-closure costs, which Frank went over. So again, most of the changes, the decrease was really due to slight decrease in the useful life and also some changes in the inflation rate, which are used in the calculation of this number. And then we do disclose at the bottom, you do have an amount set aside in the reserves of approximately $421,000 to fund the future costs. So your long-term debt was repaid in the year. Then note number 11 is just your segmented information. So this just gives you more details of what's included in each segment. So then note number 12 here is your reserve and reserve fund continuity. So it just shows the beginning balance, the increases and decreases, and then the ending balances here. So you notice on your reserve and your reserve funds here, there's interest earned. This is mostly from the investment in the one fund to support the reserve fund. And then we just disclosed the Aqua agreement. It was a 7-year agreement, and I think approximately have 4 years left on that agreement here, and the charges. The next note is your budget figures note. So this takes, it reconciles the budget that you've approved to the budget that's presented in the financial statements. So we adjust for things like your capital assets and amortization. Obviously you don't budget for your amortization, but you do budget for your capital asset purchases in the year. And we remove the actual purchases, and then we set up the amortization in the adjustments column here. And then note number 16 is just the COVID-19 impact. So this is similar to the prior year where we disclose your responses, and we've obviously discussed this with management, and we believe the disclosure is appropriate and adequate. And then we've already gone through Schedule 1. So Schedule 2 is just your continuity of your capital assets. So you'll see here was your large addition for your airport. So it gives you your ending net book value of $22.8 million. And then on the next page is just your schedule of segmented disclosure. So it just presents the statement of operations in more detail by segment. And it replicates what's in the FIR, the Financial Information Return. And then we've attached the trust statement that I won't go through in detail. Are there any questions?
Apparently there are none.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Scampanella, seconded by Councillor Arola. Resolved that Council has been provided a presentation by Grant Thornton Auditors of the draft 2020 Consolidated Financial Statement for the Township. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review, Council does hereby approve the draft version as presented. All in favor? Thank you. Done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was very good.
Frank, thank you, Lindsay.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Hey. There are no petitions. We move to Councillor Moffat. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scampanello. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 13th, 2021 are adopted as circulated. All in favor? And there are two items in correspondence. Do we need to discuss either of them? Okay. Moved by Councillor Arola, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that correspondence items 08-01 and 08-02 be received and filed. All in favor? Thank you. Next item is an update by our CAO.
Great. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. A few updates for you tonight. The township is currently we have a call out for public consultation on the draft property standards bylaw. And we have received quite a bit of feedback in the past 48 hours regarding what we believe to be some misunderstanding about the intent of the property standards bylaw. And I just want to clarify that we do have an existing property standards bylaw. It was developed in 1987, and it's called the Maintenance and Occupancy Standards. And what's interesting is that this bylaw was developed that mirrors the Building Code Act, and it was 32 pages back in 1987. And so our current, or the draft bylaw that we're presenting is 39 pages. So there's a lot of overlap. Things haven't changed. It still allows the township to enforce properties that are below what are deemed acceptable maintenance standards. But there's two important differences with the new draft bylaw. And one is that it incorporates new legislation from the Building Code Act, and it brings it up to date to current standards and current legislations and laws. But the other difference is that back in 2018, the province downloaded the enforcement of tenant properties, rental properties to municipalities. And it requires that the municipal bylaw enforcement officer address the concerns that are raised by tenants if they are in a position where their landlord isn't providing them with adequate heat or running water or hot water. And it allows the tenant to be able to contact the municipality to say, I'm experiencing trouble with my landlord. I have a right to these essential services, but I'm not getting them. So the municipality can step in and work with the landlord to upgrade the property to the standards that are within the bylaw. So those are the two big differences. And we just want to ensure that the public is aware of what it is that we're asking. There have been comments made on Facebook that the township is going to enter people's homes and check on the cleanliness of their floors, the color of the paint on their walls, and the temperature of their home, but that is completely untrue. So we want everyone to be educated on the matter and to respond accordingly. So we've put out public information in many sources at the library, at the Golden Age Center, online, on our website, through My Manitowoc. And we just really encourage people to read the information for themselves, understand what it is that we're asking, to develop a bylaw that's unique for Manitowoc, because if we don't have a bylaw in place, then we have to follow the Residential Tenancy Act, which may be more strict than what our own bylaw might say. So let's work together and create a bylaw that works for Manitowoc. And we also have the information available at the town office, because I'm pleased to say that the town office opened its doors today. We're operating Monday to Thursday from 1 to 4 p.m. And we actually had a very busy afternoon. When we opened the door, there was a lineup of people who wanted to come in and pay their bills, which was really great too. On with other items, Public Works has been very busy over the past couple of weeks. You may have noticed that there were roof repairs being done to our arena. So we did have some leaks in the building, but those have been repaired and will get us through to next year, where we're hoping we'll be able to completely replace the roof through a grant that we are submitting. Public Works also had a paving crew in town. They've been able to do most of the paving that was required before they had to leave, but there are a few areas that they will get to when they come back in the spring. And you may have noticed that the playground equipment at the Martin Park has been removed now, and we will be commencing with more public consultation around what the public would like to see in that space. So we'll be working with the community over the next couple of months to plan for a new build in the spring. And of course, recreation is also very busy, and it's Halloween this weekend, and we have an exciting outdoor spooktacular event at the barn property on Ski Hill Road, and that's taking place on Saturday for the young children between 5:30 and 6:30 before it gets dark, and then adults age 12 and over from 7:30 to 9:30. And I'd like to thank all our staff for putting all their work in. Chris for the audit, Darren for the hard work at the Public Works, and Katie for all your hard work at Recreation. Thanks, that's it.
That's it. Any questions?
Just thank you for the clarification.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Next item is the Roma conference on January 23rd to the 25th. And we wondered how many of the councillors would like to be involved in that. I don't think that's a very expensive item because it's a teleconference.
Right. Yeah.
Could you get anybody?
I hate to commit in the wintertime.
You can't? Okay, I will go. I won't make it for sure, but.
I'll let you know when we get closer. I'm not sure right now. I'm tentative.
I'll put your name down, and if you have to cancel, we'll cancel you. Okay.
I'm unavailable.
All right, that's good. I think Kathy said she was interested in it, or is she?
I can't recall, but we could certainly try to get in touch with her. There is a deadline coming up.
Okay, I'll put her name down, and then if we have to take it off, we'll take her name off.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Scampanella, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that the 2022 Rural Ontario Municipal Association Roma Annual Virtual Conference is scheduled to be held on January 23rd to the 25th, 2022, and be it further resolved that the following council and staff members will attend. Will you be attending?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Mayor McEachran, Councillor Rolla, Councillor Hudson, and CAO Florence McLean. All in favor? Thank you. Now, there's also at the same time we would like to ask for delegations to that conference. So is there any delegations at this time that you would recommend us talking about? Do you have?
I do. Through you, Mr. Chair, one thing that we have talked about in the past few months was maybe a delegation with the Minister of Health regarding Santé Manitowoc Health, the concerns that they've recently experienced with nursing shortage and physician recruitment. So I thought perhaps a delegation with the Minister of Health to lobby for more resources in Manitowoc might be a good effort.
Okay, very good. Nothing further? Okay. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scampanella. Resolved that Council request delegations to the following minister at the 2022 Rural Ontario Municipal Association Roma Annual Conference. Minister of Health. All in favor? Thank you. Next item is Mr. Towns.
Thank you. Through the chair, as per the I've provided you with the Q3 budget variance report, same as will be done in September, which was for the first half of the year. We have given you our budget amounts versus our actual expenditures for your review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
And where are these numbers again?
In the report I provided you.
No.
No, in the agenda.
Oh.
On page
15.
as per the strategic plan, it was recommended that administration provides council with quarterly reports. In September, I had provided you with the first half of the year, and moving forward, you will get them quarterly. This is the third quarter.
Is there anything in here, I looked at it, but is there anything in here that you think that you should explain more than?
Not necessarily.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, no.
Yeah, okay. I didn't have any problem with it.
No, but just,
That was an easy one.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Moved by Councillor Scampanella, second by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report TR 2021-14 submitted by Chris Collins, Treasurer, regarding Quarter 3 Budget Variance Report. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council accept the Q3 Budget Variance Report as presented. All in favor? Thank you. The next item is a report from Eileen.
Thank you. Through the chair, administration became aware of a plot of land in the downtown commercial core, vacant property that has not been identified as and declared as surplus. In order for us to be able to list that land for sale, which are lots 135 to 140. That's the location that's in behind Caddy's in the garage. There's a plot of land behind there. That has to be declared surplus in order for us to list it.
I think we spoke about that at the last council meeting anyway.
yeah, I got no issues with that.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Scampanella, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-47 submitted by Jolene Keogh, Clerk, Planning Administrator, regarding surplus property. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council declares lots 135 to 140 in Registered Plan M163 as surplus property, and further that Council directs staff to list lots 135 to 140 in Registered Plan M163 for sale. All in favor? Thank you. The next item is administration report from.
Thank you, through you,
CAO.
Mr. Chair. 3 new personnel policies to add to our personnel policy binder. All 3 of them are related to leaves that employees may be able to take if they find themselves in situations of family emergencies, sick leave, and also bereavement leave. So the policies help guide staff in what leaves are available to them, how long those leaves are, whether they are paid or unpaid. And it simplifies the administration process when staff has this information available to them when they may be experiencing a situation in their life. So these policies, if approved by Council, would be added to the personnel policy binder.
Any questions?
No, we look standard.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Rolla, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-48 submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding personnel policies. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council approves Personnel Policy 2021-20, the sick leave and personal emergency leave policy. And further that Council approves Personnel Policy number 2021-22, the family medical leave policy, and further the Council approves Personnel Policy number 2021-24, the bereavement leave policy. All in favor? Thank you. It looks like you're still on, eh?
It does look like that. So pleased to state that we have received funding approval for 4 small projects, but each one does require a legal agreement to be signed with the province. So we received funding, as you'll note, for improvements to our website, Telephone upgrades, which will switch us over from landlines to VoIP, or Voice over Internet Protocol phones. An inspection management system, which will provide some efficiencies in our municipal assets. And then a recreation booking system, which will allow residents to register online and make payments online for things like programming at the recreation center, or even paying for their golf fees. So all of this will be implemented into our existing software, and we look forward to being able to have these new fangled opportunities at the township.
No questions? Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scapanello. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-49 submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding Ontario Transfer Payments Agreement. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council review and consideration, that Council authorizes the signing of the Transfer Payment Agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario for projects totaling $33,750 to be used as identified within the Transfer Payment Agreements. All in favor? The last item is health and safety.
So we're pleased to say that Melissa Biggin has agreed to be the staff representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and we are requesting that Council make the appointment.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that Council appoints the following to the Health and Safety Committee. Melissa Biggins as the non-union representative. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scapanello, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in the Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the Municipal Modernization Program Intake 2 Transfer Payments Agreement to be read a first and second time. And further be read a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2021-41. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Rolla, seconded by Councillor Scapanello, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Township of Manitowoc at its meeting held Wednesday, October 27, 2021, be read a first and second time. And furthermore be read a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2021-42. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that the regular meeting adjourn at the hour of 8:02. All in favor?